Good evening to all of you. I would like to welcome you all for today's webinar on historical perspective of coral reefs in Sri Lanka and future conservation needs. Organized by the Section B of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science in collaboration with Environmental Committee of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science. Today we have three panelists. Mr. Arjan Rajasooriya, he is the coordinator of Coastal and Marine Program, IUCN Sri Lanka Country Office, and Professor Terney Predeep Kumara, Department of Oceanography and Marine Geology, Institute of Ruhuna, and Professor Kamal Ranathunaga, Director, Center for Marine Science and Technology, University of Jayewardenepura. And first, I would like to invite Mr. Arjan Rajasooriya. I have a small notice for all the participants. Please make sure your mic is muted and video is switched off. And if you have any questions, just put them all into the chat box. Mr. Arjan Rajasooriya has been exploring the reefs since late 1960s. He was in charge of the Coral Reefs Research Program at the National Aquatic Resources Research and Development Agency from 1988 to 2012. He has contributed to the establishment of marine protected areas, special areas management plans, and coastal management. He also served as the Sri Lanka National Coordinator for the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network from 1988 to 2006. Presently, he is the marine and coastal expert at IUCN Sri Lanka Country Office. Today, he is going to talk about historical perspectives on coral reef research, conservation, and management in Sri Lanka with regional overview. Mr. Arjan Rajasooriya, over to you.
Thank you very much. At the outset itself, I would like to thank Section B of SLAAS for giving us this opportunity, because I think we do not hear very much about the background of coral reefs and their exploration in our country. So just bear with me, I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see the screen? Yes, Raj. Okay, then I shall proceed. Thank you once again, and good evening. In this presentation, I am taking the first part of it, and that would be the historical perspectives, the research, conservation, and management with a regional overview. First of all, I will take you to where coral reefs are in Sri Lanka. The map shows red patches. These are the areas where you get most of the coral reefs. There are smaller patches distributed elsewhere as well. And today we have 245 species of hard corals. And we call hard corals the ones that build reefs. As we know, the coral reefs. There are other types of corals that do not build reefs. And also there are corals that are not called reef building corals, but also in cold water in very deep areas. So we are not talking about those today. We are only talking about the ones that build reefs. For example, like the reef in Italy. So in the world itself, there are close to 900 species of corals. The species lists change all the time, as you know, like in other sciences of natural resources. The genetics play a big role now in the identification of species. So up to today, we are having 245 species for Sri Lanka, which is quite high, in fact, when you take the regional aspect. Then let's look at the extent of reefs in the South Asian region. We have only a small amount, although we boast about it. We talk a lot about coral reefs as if we have a lot, but we don't. We only have 680 square kilometers, and compare that with what you see for the Maldives and India. Now, Maldives, you know, is a group of atolls, and their coral growth is very high. There are no rivers, no sedimentation, and always blue waters. And in India, there are 4 major coral areas. The Gulf of Mannar, just across our Mannar coast, and then the Gulf of Kutch, which is between India and Pakistan, and a little bit in the Malvan coast, just south of Bombay, along the mainland coast, and also the Lakshadweep Islands belongs to India, which is basically the northern part on the same mountain range as you get the Maldives. Then on the eastern side, India also owns Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So that's why India has such a lot of reefs. And those reefs are very, very diverse, because the Gulf of Mannar reefs is similar to ours. Gulf of Kutch is in a very harsh environment, high salinity, lot of sediment, and so on. Andaman and Nicobar is very close to the species groups that you find in the Indo-Pacific area, like in the Thailand, in Indonesia, and Malaysia. Whereas the Lakshadweep is very similar to what you get in the Maldives. Pakistan has very little coral, and Bangladesh has only one small island in front of the Ganges called Zinjira Narikal. And on that island, around that, you get a lot of small branching coral patches. And that's why you have something about 50 square kilometers. So from a global total, we have about 0.24%. The early research on the taxonomic part, because in Sri Lanka, most of the work has been concentrated on this para-taxonomic aspect. And also, there are some species, the holotype comes from Sri Lanka. For example, this big antler-like branching coral called Acropora rudis. Acropora rudis, the distribution is actually very much restricted to the southern coast. You get some patches just south of the rocky islets in Hikkadua, and also around Matara, and some around the Red Basses. They are very large branching corals. The holotype comes from Sri Lanka, collected in the 19th century, because there were expeditions that collected specimens, not only corals, but reef fishes and other organisms that describe these. So the holotype is not with us, actually. It's in the British Museum of Natural History. And then where you get most of the groups of corals described is from the Mannar area, from the off Silavature, from the pearl banks, because Professor Herdman has a huge set of books or publications called the pearl banks, the diversity of marine organisms from the pearl bank. So a number of solitary corals are corals that we normally do not see. They are not like the branching corals. They do not have a lot of coral polyps nearby, near to each other, just like the picture on your left-hand side on this one. Each of those branches, you see lots of little dots, and each dot carries an animal. So it's a colony. But the solitary corals are quite different. I haven't a picture here, but you may have seen what you call mushroom corals. They are generally larger than the small corals that you normally associate yourself with, but they have a single mouth in the center and a polyp. Then there was a physiographic zonation survey carried out in 1974 by Mergnanscher in the Hikkadu area and the South Indian and Ceylon coral reef. Then also more solitary corals were described again in the 1931, and Pillay in 1972 collated all this information and made a checklist of stony corals of seas around India and Ceylon. When we were working on this identification of corals to build up a checklist, we used Pillay's checklist as a starting point, because by that time he has collated all the other things that have been going on before, and he had made a checklist. And then there were other publications, coral species of the Indian Ocean and the adjacent seas. And then we made a checklist in 1985 with ecological notes, which was presented at SLAAS, section B. And then we collated work that we did at NARA, and then came up with a checklist for the National Red List of Sri Lanka, which had 208 species of coral. Then more recently, we did a survey of the Northern Islands. And from that, we added another species which is new to Sri Lanka. Very recently, actually last month, a new paper came out on the status of coral reefs of the Jaffna Peninsula by Ashani Arulanandan and others. And they brought up 36 new records for Sri Lanka from the Jaffna Peninsula alone. So now that's how we make up 245. And there are many other survey reports of NARA and also from the University of Ruhuna that have lists of corals found in different parts of the country. Then I will take you to the International Coral Reef Symposiums that actually bring the scientists together, and we present papers and so on and share information. And you can get these publications in the Reef Base. You go to reefbase.org, you will have all the symposiums that have been there from day one. And day one actually happens to be in India. In 1972, the first Coral Reef Symposium was held at the Mandapam camp in India. Then there were also International Tropical Marine Ecosystem Symposium. This ITMEMS is actually a management symposium. So you're presenting more management papers here rather than research papers, which goes into the International Coral Reef Symposium. Then, before going there, I would like to point out one thing. Now, most of the work that we have been doing on our coral reefs are centered around corals. But that really doesn't help us in managing the coral reefs, because we are using other resources on the coral reefs for our sustenance and probably businesses, export, tourism, and those tend to be fish, sea cucumber, lobsters, everything else. So when you consider the management of reefs, it is very important that we consider all these other aspects. And I leave it at that, where Professor Kamal can pick up from where I leave with regard to research. Then there were regional networks that were set up. The US State Department has a network called the International Coral Reef Initiative, ICRI. So from ICRI, there were several actions that came up. One was the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network, called the GCRMN, where I was the national coordinator for several years in Sri Lanka. There was also the International Coral Reef Action Network. So each of these have different roles to play. Now the GCRMN is primarily looking at the biophysical and the socio-economic aspects of coral reef monitoring. Whereas the International Coral Reef Action Network looks at forming new networks, awareness education, and so on. You may have heard of this coral reef death, large-scale coral reef death in 1998, related to global warming and during the El Nino, La Nina period. As a result of that, there was discussion at the first ITMEMS meeting. I mentioned ITMEMS in one of the previous slides. The South Asian group got together and decided to form a separate network called Coral Reef Degradation in the Indian Ocean. It's called CORDIO. So CORDIO also started monitoring reefs, biophysical as well as socio-economic, and feeding that information into CORDIO reports. What you see below, I have shown you one of them, and also to the GCRMN network. So South India actually had this separate network. Similar networks have now been established in various other places, like the CARICOM, which is in the Caribbean region. And then the South Asia Coral Reef Task Force was established as an action of ICRAN, International Coral Reef Action Network. South Asia Coral Reef Task Force came under SACEP, South Asia Cooperative Environment Program, which is in charge of the UNEP work for the South Asian Seas region. It's based in Sri Lanka. So the South Asia Coral Reef Task Force is actually established under SACEP. However, this is now defunct. This is not functioning for a number of years. Another point I want to make here is that in Sri Lanka, a lot of actions, a lot of work, a lot of initiatives need foreign intervention to get energy to move. Without that, it comes to standstill. You look at any project along the coast. The special area management planning projects, you know, Hikkadua, Rakawa, Nigambu, Pigeon Island, Bari, all of that. As soon as the project ends, this comes to a standstill, because we are not ready to pick up the baton. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to highlight. One of the main points that I wanted to highlight. So this Coral Reef Task Force is also more or less defunct right now. So conservation and management. We've made a lot of publications as a result of these various projects, and also national programs that have been going on at NARA. So I have highlighted a few of them. We have also contributed this knowledge to the Coastal Zone Management Plan. The last one I have shown here, the 2018. And there were other reports that we have done on various research programs. And these are the management plan and the environment profile for the Bari. But there are similar plans for Hikkadua, Rakawa, and Pigeon Islands, and so on. Then education and awareness also, we have contributed quite a lot, through special area management planning processes, individual government institutes that have been doing things, then universities, we have published posters, webinars and seminars, such as this one, and the International Year of the Reef celebrations and programs. And you can see on your right-hand side, some things that we have done. So this is one of the teachers' handbooks on coral reefs in all 3 languages. And the International Year of the Reef celebrations. And then first day cover of stamps and Ocean Day celebrations and associated programs. The last one I have put up here, which Dr. Terney was heading to MIPA. And then we have also been supported a lot by the GCRM in training programs. There were several training programs happening in the South Asian region that involved India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bangladesh, and 1 or 2 participants from Pakistan in some of the workshops. So they were mainly concentrating on the biophysical, socio-economic monitoring of reefs. We have also had data analysis workshops in Chennai. So this is a support that came from the Global Coral Reef Monitoring Network. And during this time, we made the South Asia Regional Report. All the countries got together and we provided the monitoring data from both biophysical and socioeconomic into these reports, which I highlighted earlier with the Cordio report as well as the GCRF report. So these are 2 of the manuals that's available online as well on the biophysical and socioeconomic monitoring. These are basically, these manuals are from the Australian Institute of Marine Science and their techniques of monitoring. And there have been other publications that have collated different monitoring methods, which you can also download from the web. Look at the marine protected areas. So in terms of protection for coral reefs, we have several marine protected areas. I haven't listed all the marine protected areas in Sri Lanka. I only listed the ones that have coral reefs as the center of, the purpose of declaring them. Hikkadua Marine National Park is the first marine protected area in Sri Lanka, declared in 1979. It was declared as a sanctuary because at that time, we were not doing a lot of research on these coral reefs. But several people noticed that tourism was having an impact on the Hikkadua Coral Garden, as it was known. And you may know the key people who wanted this protected was late Rodney John-Class, late Sir Arthur C. Clarke, and late Mike Wilson, and several others. They saw that there was an impact, a negative impact due to tourism being developed in the Hikkadua area, and recommended that this be made a sanctuary. So all marine protected areas are declared under the Fauna and Flora Protection Ordinance in Sri Lanka, implemented by the Department of Wildlife Conservation. So Hikkadua was the first one. Then there was Pigeon Island, Bar Reef, Rumassala. Very recently, Kayankani was declared a sanctuary. The last one to declare was the Great and Little Basses Sanctuary, which was declared in 2019. And today, the Great and Little Basses Sanctuary is the largest in Sri Lanka. Before that, it was the Bar Reef Sanctuary. So now the bar reef takes second place in terms of size. And the third largest one doesn't contain very much coral reefs, a small area, but it's the Vidattaltivu Nature Reserve, which is in the Pork Bay, north of Mannar, between Mannar and actually in the Mount Thai area. You may have heard of Mount Thai. So in that area, but primarily for seagrasses and mangroves. It's also interesting to note that there are several categories of 3 categories actually of the marine protected areas. They are following the same categories that you find on land protected areas, terrestrial protected areas. There is a national park, there are sanctuaries, and there is a nature reserve category. So they have different levels of activities that people can do. For example, the national park, you need a ticket to enter, just like you enter Yala or somewhere, Vilapattu. Then a sanctuary, you can actually enter without a ticket. And you can also have people doing various activities within a sanctuary, like for example, fishing. If there was fishing that was going on within a sanctuary before it was declared, then those fishermen are allowed to fish, but under certain rules and regulations, so that you don't overexploit and you don't damage the habitats and you don't cause depletion of what's in there. So similarly, the great and little basses also is a sanctuary now. And another thing that I wanted to highlight here is that declaration is one thing, looking after them is another thing. So I think Dr. Terney and Dr. Kamal will highlight the issues and those aspects of it. So I'll stop at that point. And so thank you very much. And I hand over the floor to the other speakers. Thank you. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you, Mr. Arjan. And our second speaker is Professor Terney Predeep Kumara. He's a well-regarded public speaker with more than 100 media appearances and a resource person for more than 200 international and local conferences, seminars, workshops, and training programs. Professor Terney is a PADI certified diver at dive master level, participated in scientific diving expeditions in India, the Maldives, Kenya, Tanzania, Indonesia, Australia, China, Sweden, Vietnam, Mauritius, and Japan, and underwater photography immense experience in exploring the reef and evaluating and managing coastal and marine ecosystems in most parts of Sri Lanka, Central, Southern, and Western Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia territories. Today, he will talk about current status of coral reefs in Sri Lanka, threats, issues, and legal framework. Professor Terney, over to you. Professor Terney, kindly unmute.
Right, thank you. I'll share my screen. Again, please allow me to share my screen. Right. So thank you, Raj, and thank you, Trishan, for giving me this opportunity. And yes, I must thank SLAAS for organizing this event. Yes, today my topic is to discuss about the current status of corals in Sri Lanka, at the same time to discuss about threats, But I will go through that line very quickly, but I will today mainly focus on the history about the legal framework, what are the legal tools we are having to manage coral reefs. Yes, Arjan mentioned a bit about the history of the coral reefs in Sri Lanka. Yes, I was happy to share all the experiences with Arjan and the rest of the team by that time. I was mentioned that during the coral reef research history, in addition to Pillay from Indian side, we have some other eminent professors, Professor Suki Ekaratna and Dr. Ranjit Silva from NARA, and again Dr. Malik Fernando. Those are the pioneers started coral research in Sri Lanka. But then from that arena, another offshoot came to Ruhuna, pioneered by Professor Kumara. She started coral research in Ruhuna University under CITES-in project with Dr. Bandhu Amarasinghe. Those are the people who actually started researching with Arjan at the very beginning. And then I was able to join them and then continue this journey researching corals. So yes, until maybe last month, we had a list of coral species about 193 numbers, but after Ashani's paper, it now developed into 240. It's good that Ashani is working with MIPA, and she published a recent research paper about the new records of coral. More than 50 new records she found from Jaffna Peninsula and from the surrounding area. So this is the coral distribution in Sri Lanka. Arjan briefly mentioned about that, but if I go through that very quickly, I must mention that the corals in southern region is almost gone now, with very less number of corals in shallow areas, extending up to 0 meters depth to about 5-4 meters depth, mainly because of the anthropogenic activities and many fisheries, and again I must mention pollution. So I will discuss a bit about pollution a bit later, and again everything top up with climate change issues, especially the very frequent with the anomalies and high water temperatures, and again high sediment loads and high toxicants loads in coastal waters really hampered the coral distribution in Sri Lanka. So these are the kind of coral reefs available in our shallow water. This is from Vedithalatu Coral Sanctuary, very lavish coral growth in those areas with lots of shallow water, branching corals, especially Acropora. So if I divide those shallow waters with deeper waters, we can understand that shallow waters are mainly predominated by these Acropora, and again Posidombra equitibuculata, and others, especially Podabacea and especially Porati species. They are taking the main composition of the coral reef in shallow waters. But if you go further down into 10, 15 to 30 meters, 15 to 20, 30 meters, the coral composition varies slightly. At that time, you can observe also agarids, especially Favonas, are taking the control there. At the same time, Symphilia, Tubastria, and again some fungids, they also take the composition. And again some bolder corals like Diploastria, Heliophora, those are the coral composition in deep areas. So therefore we can see some sort of a total different coral composition from compared to shallow areas to deep areas. These are the pictures you are seeing from shallow areas. And when it goes to deeper sites, the corals become very sparse and very loosely arranged, and very some plate-like corals and corals covering all the hard surfaces. They are spreading on a horizontal way. But then these corals are now facing a number of issues with especially climate change. So even very recently we observed some coral bleaching events. We must understand that bleaching is a kind of symptoms that's not permanent. So soon as the condition become favorable, the bleached corals can revert back to the healthy level. But if this condition, the unfavorable conditions prevail, these corals definitely will move forward with the bleaching and ultimately end up with dying and perish their lives. Therefore, the bleaching is very temporary. But with the time, with the with the environment conditions, we can easily revert back the breaching conditions in coral habitats. And this is kind of a coral reef that show very unhealthy appearance, showing bleaching event. So this is actually from Pigeon Islands. That especially shows that these corals are stressed mainly because of temperature anomalies, especially high temperature levels, especially in shallow areas around Pigeon Islands. Then I move into the fisheries sector. Definitely, fisheries is one of the badly damaging sector to coral reefs. For example, starting from if you think about the bar reef, lila nets and trammers, those are really taking corals out at the same time in shallow reefs. Although these are banned fishing gear, the moxie nets are very much are used by fishermen in especially in all the shallow areas. Therefore, these moxie nets are very much detrimental to the corals. In addition to this netting, then bottom set nets again cause huge damage to the coral. These are bottom set nets laid in Silawatura Reef. In Silawatura Reef, not only bottom set net, but again brush piles combined with the dynamites are still using. So therefore, even though Silawatura is offshore reef, Silawatura Vankale Reef, the system is offshore reef, but still those are very much exposed to fisheries, especially unsustainable fishing methods like bottom set net and dynamites. So when it comes to, you can see what sort of damage they are causing, bringing all the rubbers to the beaches, and especially in the western coast, all this the evidence can be observed if you walk along the beaches. Rubble mounds, arranged along the beaches. Those are mainly the result of this unsustainable fishing practices. Those are the main impacts at the moment we are facing regarding the fisheries. Then some impacts from local and foreign tourists. We think that tourists are not, especially foreign tourists, are not damaging reefs. But if you go to areas like Hikkadu or Pigeon Islands, and again in Pasikuda, Kalkuda, you can see how often they walk on reefs. So because of the fragility of the reef, the reef walking or trampling is very much harmful and create huge amount of pressure on reefs. Then I was asked to talk a bit about marine pollution. Yes, the pollution mainly from spilled oil from one side. On the other hand, the pollution from liquid substances that is coming from land-based sources, and again solid substances coming from land-based sources. So if you take one beach as that is in Vellavatta, you can see the beached solid waste. So this solid waste counts for only 30% of solid waste we add into the ocean. 70% of waste, they disappear in the ocean waters. It means they sink, or if not, they are floating on the water and create floating waste islands that really cut off all the lights and air circulation between atmosphere and the ocean waters, and create huge, array of problems with the time. Therefore, the solid waste is another problem we are facing. On the top of that, the liquid pollution. Liquid pollution in the sense of toxic chemicals coming through waterways as a result of agrochemicals, the chemicals we are using at industries or at household level. And again, chemicals used in vehicles and others just emitting to the environment, they enter into the waters. And then nutrients like nitrates, phosphate coming from agro farms, and again from rivers, and again from various sources. So those are the unseen source kind of the pollution that is happening in coastal waters. Therefore, the nutrient loads, chemical loads, especially in the shallow areas, are very much high compared to the deeper waters. Therefore, all around the state, around the country, you can see the corals are not thriving well in coastal waters, especially if you dive in very shallow areas. Most of the corals are dead and covered with huge amount of sediment layers and converting them into algal beds or other barren surfaces without any settlement. So that is the situation mainly because of this pollution. And some invasive species here, this Diplosoma varians spreading in some reefs, and again not only that, some crown of thorns spreading, and again sea urchins. With the connection of some climate change issues at the same time, high nutrient loads again contribute to this sort of species spread in those areas. So this is the present situation of our coral reefs in Sri Lanka. Means they are not enjoying a good life in Sri Lankan waters, and our corals are still dying and slowly disappearing with the time. Therefore, if we think about 2050, it is not sure how much corals will stay in our waters, at least to show to our next generations that the rate of coral disappearance is such high. So that's our understanding with last maybe 2 or 3 decades experience living with corals. So those are the main situation of our corals in our waters. Then I move into the legal aspects, how corals can be protected and what sort of provisions we are having to protect corals. So on the law of the sea, you know, from the coastline up to 200 nautical miles, the whole EEZ belongs to the territory, the coastal state, and all the resources on the water and just on the sea floor and sub-bottom should be managed by the coastal state. Therefore, so it is the duty of the coastal state to conserve and manage natural resources. From that, these coastal states become obliged to control or manage these coastal resources. It means corals also comes under that definition. Then UNFCCC under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So it also mentioned that countries should take actions to protect their climate systems, especially starting from the land, the rainforest, and again in the sea, coral reefs and seagulls and all the coastal vegetations. And again, the coastal nations should develop and upgrade and publish national inventories about emission sources. At the same time, they should mitigate climate actions. At the same time, they should control, reduce, or prevent anthropogenic emissions of greenhouse gases. So that also mainly contribute to reduce the pressure that is coming to coral reef, because become party to UNFCCC, Sri Lanka or the countries become bound legally or bound to take this action. So, but this also lead to protect coral reefs, and again develop national inventories, and then CBD, Convention of Biological Diversity. Yes, again the same. So become a party, countries become again eligible or take actions to protect their biodiversity. Biodiversity means land biodiversity plus the ocean biodiversity. Therefore, the country should develop national strategies, plans, programs for the conservation of coral reefs or biodiversity. That's why we are mainly focusing on red listing. So that also comes under this. And again, the countries should do some into relevant sectoral or cross-sectoral plans, programs, and policies to conserve biodiversity. And the country should identify biodiversity components. Like that, coral also comes under that. And again, take measures to monitor through sampling and other techniques to have records about the present status of biodiversity in each countries. So those are the responsibilities coming under CBD. And again, to establish a system of protected areas, and again develop guidelines. And again the protection of ecosystems and natural habitats. So through that also, the countries become eligible or obliged to take some actions to protect coral reefs. And again, not only that, to promote access to conservation. And again, commit those countries, we become eligible to ask some support from developed countries, also ask some funds to various programs. So that those are the things we have received through CBD, Convention of Biological Diversity. Then CITES is again another international convention that really gives a clear guidance and will control international trade of these endangered species. So at present, there are about 183 parties, including countries. So the main target of this convention is to control the international trade of these species, including corals. So CITES regulates commercial and non-commercial trade of corals and again wildlife. It controls international trade. For that, they use a system of permits and certificates. So if you want to export or import some CITES listed organism, definitely you should provide some information. You should take a permission or you should take a certificate to export or import. So therefore, the CITES control is mainly scientific, but mainly focused on documentation parts, but it's very scientific documentation. And CITES has three lists, three appendices. So appendix 1 especially discuss about species threatened with extinction. So from complete whole biodiversity, 3% of the species come under this category. So this is not to be used for primarily for commercial purposes. These species cannot be used for any commercial purposes. And again, in this case, international trade is totally prohibited. But if you can import them, but with a proper certificate from sending party and again from receiving party. But the CITES Annex 2 is again the next level. In that case, coral comes under CITES Annex 2, not under Annex 1. Therefore, you have to take a permission to export them, but import part, there are some relaxation there. About 92% of the whole biodiversity is covered under Appendix 2. So through that, corals again covered, but under Appendix 2. Therefore, in this case, the main thing is that the species not necessarily threatened with extinction, but for which trade must be controlled to avoid their becoming threatened. So in this case, the trade is allowed for some extent, but not completely restricted. Therefore, in corals is a kind of question point. But in Sri Lankan side, we are a bit ahead than that. In Sri Lanka, we have put corals through local legislations. We have listed coral as a species that we should take a permit. And again, CITES Appendix 3, that is mainly localized. So any country can decide about their species, whether to issue permits or not. For that, the countries can consult their management authorities or scientific authorities. So those are the main international, I can say, tools available to control our marine biodiversity. At the same time, corals also comes under that. Then in the larger picture, SDG. So SDG, SDG 14 is life underwater. So first one, marine pollution, 14.2, sustainable management ecosystems, 14.3, acidification control, and 14.4, controlling overfishing, and again 14.5, conserve at least 10% of coastal marine ecosystem. Those 5 definitely impacting on coral conservation. And then I move to local legislation we are having. That is then intentionally how we are bound to protect our coral reefs. And then we have FFPU, so Flora and Fauna Ordinance. So there, as Arjan mentioned, these are the main provisions to establish a wildlife protected area system. At the same time, to regulate import and export of wildlife species, and again give legal power for wildlife officers to implement those ordinances. Those are the major provisions. So under this ordinance, you can see part 1 talk about marine parks and reserve sanctuaries. So Arjan just mentioned about that. And again, part 3 talks about species export and import provisions. So corals also comes under that part 3. Therefore, part 1 and part 3 are mainly focusing on the corals also comes under this part 1 and part 3. These are the wildlife reserves. So in these reserves, these are the things prohibited, but at the same time, we should know that there are two kind of reserves, sanctuaries and national reserves. In sanctuaries, anybody can can have a private land, but it is not restricted. But in national reserves, composed of state lands, entry only on permit. National reserves are the most restricted of all these kinds. National reserves, you can see strict national reserves, nature reserves, national parks, jungle corridors, and marine national. All marine national parks comes under national reserves list. So under that, protection and law enforcement, habitat management, ecotourism, conservation and education, and extension, buffer zone management, those comes and everything comes under MPAO, marine park management. So Arjan just mentioned some marine parks in Sri Lanka. Here are I am here providing you with the list. Then marine national parks: Adams Beach, Delf, Ikkaduwa, Ussangoda, Chundikolam, and Pigeon Islands. And then these are the sanctuaries: Parevtiu, Great Soba, Little Soba, Godawaya, Rakawa, Rumassala, Rocky Islands, Wangkali, and Viditharatiu. And these are marine associated protected areas when they declared, the extent is there. And some brief idea about these marine protected areas in Sri Lanka. I will not go through this very because all these are very common information. This is 4 marine reserves. So the 4 marine national parks and sanctuaries. This is Hikkaduwa, some details about Hikkaduwa, and some details about Bar Reef, and some about Pigeon Islands, and again something about Rumassala Marine Sanctuary. And under part 3 of this, that's under part 1 of FFPO, but under part 3, section 31B listed all the prohibited species. That corals also come under this part, and the corals also listed under Schedule 4 of this convention of this act. And section 37 discuss about import of these corals, and section 40 discuss about export. So it's prohibited to export without a permit. So all the permit systems are discussed under these sections under FFPO. And under FFPO, section 41A especially discuss or state about corals. So then I move to the next act, the Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Act number 2 of 1996. In that section, at the very beginning, it says 17 prescribed fishing operations just to control fishing, because I mentioned that fishing is one of the detrimental source that really damage corals. So if you want to do use some fishing methods, you have to take the permission. And again, some fishing gears are prohibited under section 28. So including push net, harpooning, moxie net, and gill net. Again, under special gazette, spear fishing. There are some issues with spear fishing to de-gazette that, but still spear fishing is now banned under Fisheries Act. You know, this incident happened maybe 2-3 years ago. And some species are prohibited, especially whales, dolphins, dugongs, turtles, the sharks, and especially tomato groupers. There's especially the tomato group is living within the reefs. And again, part 4 of this act definitely discuss about protection of fish and other aquatic resources. Section 27 discuss about dynamiting. So again, dynamite is prohibited under section 27. Your dynamite is one of the detrimental fishing gear and used vastly. Even now, dynamite is used. 27.1a, 27.1b discuss about dynamite. So you cannot use it. You cannot use dynamite fish with you, and you can sell, you can land, you can buy, you can even possess, or you can transport those fish. I am not discussing this in detail here. And then fisheries management areas under section 31. Again, fisheries management means ultimately we manage the environment. Not totally focusing on corals, but again, help corals to survive these areas. And again, these are some fishery management areas in Sri Lanka: great basses, little basses, called Hena, again, another Silavaturi system, and again, in the east coast, Askuda-Kalkuda system, and again south coast. And again, some closed seasons and an open season, especially for lobsters, to protect our marine environment. So lobster fishing is again almost linked with associated with coral reefs. And again, these are the closed season for lobsters, and penalties are there. And again, the declaration of fisheries reserves again is possible under Fisheries Act. So there are some allowed actions and prohibited actions are there under this fisheries reserve section. So these are the things you can do special measures consider to afford special protection of aquatic resources, including corals there. And these are the prohibited actions: mining and otherwise gather or process corals, again banned under this section. Then I move to the CCD Act. It also under section 31A prohibit mining, collection of coral within coastal zone, right? And those are the acts definitely focusing on controlling coral reef degradations through fisheries, through pollution, and through various anthropogenic activities. So today it was a bit difficult task for me, but I was happy to discuss about these legal tools, what is available locally, what is available globally to protect our corals. So that's the main action discussion points I can share with you for the moment. I will discuss further during the discussion session. So with that, I stop here. I thank you for your time and transfer the floor to Trishan. Over to you, Trishan. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Terney. So I would like to invite our final speaker, Professor Kamal Ranathunaga. Professor Kamal Ranathunaga has did his PhD in marine biology at James Cook University, Australia. He is a professor at Department of Zoology, University of Sri Lanka, and he is a director at Center for Marine Science and Technology, University of Sri Lanka. He is also former president of SLAAS Section D and a member of Australian Coral Reef Society. His major research interests are marine ecology, marine bioinvasions, marine environmental assessments, and marine pollution. Professor Kamal, over to you.
Thank you very much, Trishan and the organizers. So I was so actually proud of today joining this, especially someone who's been in the SLAAS for some time as an active member, but I couldn't be in the SLAAS for some time. But of course, today so happy. So I'll be just discussing a little bit on the what research needed when it comes to the coral reef with my experience on the field. Right. So Sri Lanka, as we all know, is a small island developing state, but we are also a big blue carbon state where we have a lot of resources. At the same time, we are very much vulnerable. We are very much susceptible to a lot of the anthropogenic as well as the natural threats. So we have been talking about these beautiful coral reefs in the history, but as we are two of our speakers discussed, now the situation is extremely bad from reaching to the other so many threats. And even sometimes we quote that we or the next generation will be the last to see the coral reefs. So they are in that type of declining phase, right? So as Professor Terney also mentioned, that it's not just because of the ecosystem services and the other services that corals provide, but we have sort of a mandate, though it's voluntary, we have a mandate to protect these ecosystems. There are, especially the coral reefs, they are like a global indicator. So we have a mandate, and there have been a lot of discussions, sort of a documentation on how to manage the coral as well as the other marine ecosystem, but we have enough legislation as well as some of the discussions. But the thing is, are they really the practical, or are they have been effective? That's something we need to discuss, right? So if you try to summarize what kind of research needs are needed, I have just summarized here. So the research need to be sort of strategy, not just do something because of the curiosity or what is that is lacking, but we have to design properly research the more strategy. Especially it need to have a high impact to the environment as well as to the academia as well, right? We need to understand the gaps, and it also need to be keep it on the visibility as well as, right? So we need to really understand what are the key issues. I'll come to these things later on, but and also we need to prioritize what researches are needed actually and what needs to be done immediately, right? These things to be considered. And mapping, it's a very important part of the research as well, because they go together, especially with our technology, where we can get information even from a mobile phone, right? But the important thing is monitoring how these things go with the research. Because monitoring, they all actually go with the research. We'll discuss like why it is needed long term, and then why we need to use some standard protocol as I can explain, right? Why we need collaborations in particular, and where we need to do the assessment, especially about something called the resilience. Very important thing when it comes to the coral reefs as well as the ecosystems, where they are losing the resilience. And we need to really think of the management success and failures, which is where we talk about something called the adaptive management, which is need to be practiced, and effectiveness of our management strategies, and also like look for new approaches where we can think of like co-management. Now even thinking of something called the ecosystem-based management, and how research would support the conservation and restoration as well. But this is very briefly, we will go through this thing. And first Terney and Arjan also talk about what are the major threats. I'm not going to discuss here, but if someone asks, among these, I have almost listed all the general issues with the coral reefs. But if somebody asks, which one is most important in India? Can you prioritize them? Can you like making a hierarchical order? So that is extremely difficult. So that's the information that we are lacking. Like some of the regions, now they have at least identified what are the key issues. I mean, these are all issues, but what are the actual issues that our reefs are facing? But this is something that research can do to some extent, of course, that won't solve all the questions, right? So actually, I just searched some sort of high impact, like the key publications in the like a Scopus is sort of a more impact oriented search engine. There resulted my key strings used were the coral reefs in Sri Lanka, and it returned 74 documents. Actually, there were 8 actually on coral reef, that out of them actually 5 were actually they were really on the environmental coral reef ecosystem. So actually, please excuse me if I missed this, because I just used the key words, the coral reef and Sri Lanka, and actually there were very few, most of them actually for margin, as you would see from these other publications. It's somehow actually I missed. I mean, the Scopus has missed the recent one you talk about, might not be in the Scopus, or the might not have the keywords. So please excuse me if your research is not listed here. Just excuse me. I am just giving a what is the situation actually. We have a lot of lacking in the high impact research in this country. Right. The other thing is the map. So Arjan has shown this. Like if you search in the web for like where the coral reefs are in Sri Lanka, I think this is maybe this one and something like this, sort of a mirror of the Arjan's work. And we can't find even a map. And that's where we need to think of seriously. Whenever you do research, we need to map where actually these reefs are rich. And that need to be go into the database, something like the Allen Coral Atlas, right? Where you can, these are web-based sort of a mapping where we can update. Right? I've seen the like bar reef, and some of the reef has been updated, especially the bar reef, but the other reefs still they are not really updated in the like this kind of accessible atlases. So this is something to think of. And even like you see the bleaching situation, even our situation is you can't even see here in these maps because they're not being updated, or it's not anyway showing. Right. So now, because then you also talk about what the monitoring approaches. So of course there are different approaches. I'm not going to detail, but like there are even in situ observations. Perhaps it's a dream for us, like an automated system, but I'm not going to talk about that. But the observer-based monitoring, as Arjan very detailed, he explained something like a GCRMN. Likewise, there are observer-based monitoring, which all research-based, and even the event or response-based monitoring, something like after some event, maybe after bleaching event, even after tsunami. I know this Arjan has done some surveys likewise. And now even talking about the citizen science, especially using like undergraduates who have some training on this, that could be another thing that we can think of. I'm just giving some of the thoughts that we can think of, right? So if you are doing a monitoring work, what kind of thing to be monitored? This is very important, and especially your research strategies need to be really representative of the particular reef. It should represent, as we know in the science, we have to represent the samples. We need to select the proper sampling plan, especially the transects. And there are a lot of parameters to be measured, more the better, like especially the key ones like carbon chemistry, very important. And if you are like you need to follow some sort of a standard framework, then they have listed what kind of parameters to be monitored. Otherwise, our sampling, our research would be like comparable with the others. That's something very important that we have to think of. And you see, there are so many things to measure. That's where we need something called collaboration from between, like we need all the chemical oceanographers, the biological and the GIS experts. We really need the collaborative research approach. And as mentioned, the ocean acidification. We know that this is key thing that because the acidity is going to be very corrosive for the corals. So that's why it's very important that carbon chemistry has to be studied with your research whenever possible. It's very important. Like the other thing, like Professor Terney mentioned, like the impact, like debris even can have a lot of impact on the ecosystem, including the corals. So these are also, I mean, this might not cost a lot, but you can keep adding into your research whenever possible. Right now, here this perhaps high-end research, but some research still they are doing on like how the changes in the future changes would impact on the corals. Like you do some simulations in the laboratory. Might think that this is too much for us, but of course, this kind of thing at least we need to think of now. And also, like the more important thing is the integration, like data sharing into different databases, something very important, something that we always discuss about, but rarely it happens. Sharing is not, most of the cases, it's not something in our day-to-day habit, unfortunately, but like even the PRDS together with now, they have developed something called this mapping. I'm not too sure that they have officially launched this one, but it's still available in the web, where you can share at least some of your data with this. And of course, there are global databases as well. Right? So now you all talk about this the needed of assessment in the protected area. Right? We all know that how important this protected areas for the ecosystem, for the human as well as for the fish as well as the coral reefs as well. But we need a lot of research on these things. Like the protected area, just demarcating a protected area won't do anything. Even the size matter, like how big it should be. Like it's too small protected area. Most of the fish or anything that develop within that the small protected area will go out and might not have any conservation meaning. If it's too big, it will have a conservation meaning, but it might not support the fisheries. So that's where we have to plan with a lot of scientific background, right? So we need to think of what is the size of the protected area should be. Of course, being a small country is not something easy, but these things has to be considered. The bigger the protected area, you will have more conservation meaning. But again, we have to balance this with the fisheries. The other thing, like the spacing of the protected area, if it is so patchy in a distance, they might not support one another. We know that these larvae, they have to go from one place to another for recruitment, for settlement. So that's where we need to have some sort of a network of protected areas where each one will benefit it. And that has to be think, because this connectivity, what we call the larval connectivity between the reefs, that has to be maintained. It's always good to have a network of protected areas rather than having a single design protected area. That's where you need the scientific background for even for deciding a protected area. Right? That's why even some of the countries like Australia, they have some sort of network of protected areas, but of course still they also have problems, but would do better than the others. And also, and even within the protected area, you need to have some sort of a zonation, which I'm not going to talk about, but it's very important that it's multiple use protected area, which benefit both the communities as well as the our major target, that is the safeguarding the corals or the other protected areas. Now, the other speakers will talk about this, the marine protected areas in Sri Lanka. But we have seen that most of these the protected areas sometimes we call as a neighborhood park sometimes, because there's so much management, and a lot of people visiting just for bathing. It's so unfortunate, and that's where something the managers need to think of. It's not the number matter in a protected area, but the real management that we need to think of. And also, like the spatial planning, it's very important. I mean, it's not for the coral reef only. Like they are increasing the uses for the marine environment, and that's where we need to do a lot of spatial planning. This is something that we also talk a lot, but unfortunately, not much thing happening. Even you see, if you take a map of around the Colombo Harbor, you see how much resource uses there, how much sea wet uses are there, but we don't have proper spatial planning. But at least we need to think of this kind of a spatial planning. Right? Now, when like countries with much better management of the research, they have a lot of publication, like in Australia, like every 5 years they have a research or the monitoring outlook report with even time to time some further like the updates on this. Most of the time it's the research outputs. So that's long-term monitoring as well as short-term monitoring outputs are shared with everybody, right? So these kind of things we need to think of. And the other important thing we need to think of, like the resilience. We need to do the assessment on the resilience. Of course, it's so difficult, but resilience is that's the coral's ability to absorb or recover from some sort of disturbances, and where they can function as usual. And there are a lot of differences in resilience which we need to understand. Right? Like there are regional variations in the reef to reef, the resilience is different. Right? Even the individual colony you see in the right image, there's one healthy coral, but all the other side is not in healthy. So that's something we need to think of, is the differences, resilience. That's where a lot of research on this. The coral colony, and it's even the microbes can be different. Some part of the issue may be these microbes as well. So these things has to be considered in our research. Right? So there are some indicators that we can use the coral resilience. For example, in this case, like the 13 indicators they're talking about, at least we need to consider some of these indicators, how the corals resilient. Right? There are ways of doing the resilience, like giving a resilience score. Like we can sort of make a sort of a matrix with resilience versus the exposure, and we can give values for this one, and we can decide which areas more resilient and which one are now not that resilient. And these things would be really helpful. And this, of course, the actions I'm not going to go into detail, they have already discussed, but here most important thing is like the local level restoration. Maybe some mitigation we can do, but at the same time some restoration. Now there's a lot of discussion about this. Is really the restoration, what do they really work? Of course, there are many different ways of doing the restoration. Like there have been a lot of trials. Of course, you might not 100% successful, but doing something is better than nothing. So, but all these has to be go with science. That is the most important thing, because no matter how much you try to recover, or restore. But if the problem why the corals are dying is still there, they are going to die. So that's where we need the science, right? So, and even like restoration or the management programs go with the science, even some here in Hawaii, they'll use some sort of sucker to remove the microalgae, which is one of the greatest tests for the coral, the threats for the coral, right? So these kind of things you have to go with research and all, right? So the restoration, as I mentioned before, I'm not going to detail, but all these, as I mentioned, we have to go with the science. That's the most important thing. We have to understand the scientific background, especially the symbiotic relationship, whether that the symbiotic algae is there with the. So that's why sometimes it's the failure. Like you can succeed. Even I have done some coral nurseries. It can be successful for several months, for a few years, but the problem is the long-term sustainability is the problem. Right now, another things like in the research, now something that we need to think of seriously, because if the corals are declining, some of the species could be that going to extinct or going to extinct from the world, for the rest of the world as well. So that now we have to think of, we might think that something like cryopreservation is a high-tech thing, but at least we need to think of using some genetic or molecular techniques to conserve this now, because if they are lost, we won't be able to get anything, right? Like using more technology like the next generation sequencing for identification, like these kind of things we really need to think of, right? So I have done some of the monitoring work in the coral reefs. Of course, we need a long-term monitoring. So I have just started some of the monitoring work with some standard monitoring frameworks using, right? So I just with a couple of minutes, I will share some of the situation with some of this monitoring work. Take a little time to load high graphic. So like this is selective or chalative oiling. This is first time I've seen what we call the bleaching, like like a whole reef was white color, except very few surviving corals. Like this is some time back actually. So, but how about the other coral reefs now? Some of these reefs I'm monitoring, like from Bar Reef. You can see the situation just early this year. This is how the Bar Reef look like. Kayankan Reef is called. There are some healthy reefs, but also very. And Rumassala, the stroke, and even Kalawila Reef. Like most of the reefs, including the Kandakuli, this also very recently, early this year, about 3-4 months back, we actually went to these reefs. So that's the situation. This is from Jaffna actually. And at the same time, this image actually I took from one of the breakwaters. You see, that some corals still survive and they are beautifully grown even in the breakwaters, right? Something for science to think of. All these take time to load. Right, so that is something that we need to think of. Why these corals naturally not, I mean, in a natural environment they are not growing, but sometimes even the breakwaters they can grow. But that's something we need to think of, right? So with that, thank you so much. I just put some thoughts where we can think of, and then of course we can have for a discussion of how you might have a better ideas as well, so which we would like to share. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Professor Kamal. Now we'll take some questions from the participants. First question from Mr. M. Sivakumar. Coral reef degradation or bleaching take place in sudden or shorter period due to temperature increase, sedimentation, plastic stagnation, marine and land-based pollution. But regeneration process or rehabilitation activities are not taken, sometimes cannot reverse. Even though coral reef protected areas, examples, Hikkaduwa, Pigeon-like Island, destructive activities are not managed properly. In Mana and Delft, the coral reef supported the seagrass beds and supported sea mammals. What is your elaboration, and how to control destructive tourism like glass bottom boats and anchoring? I think Dr. Terney or Mr. Arjan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Arjan, will you start?
Arjan.
Yes, it is. It's a lot of issues that you have actually put in that question. Now, actually, managing human activities is really a difficult thing. In the experiences that we have had over the years, one important point comes out, which is this co-management or involving the people in the management process. That is lacking in Sri Lanka very much. We always try to manage it from a policeman's approach. That kind of approach actually worked in the past. But the present situation is that we have a large population on the coast and people are doing various things, often conflicting activities between different groups or with each other. So in management, we need to have this, our thinking must change to absorb these end users in the management process. That is my conclusion. Others may have different ideas, but this is also one of the things that is promoted in the world today, what is called co-management or community participatory management. You can use different terms, but it all ends up as involving as many stakeholders as possible in this thing. But I have been involved in some of these activities under the special area management planning process of the Coast Conservation Department. I must say that this is not an easy process, and it's also a very long-term process. And we do not, or we should not, do this thing as a project activity. This is a process, like running a relay. So each project may not be able to go all the way. You know, the first runner has to give the baton to the second runner. That's the way you have to see it. But unfortunately in Sri Lanka, every project starts from scratch. So you're reinventing the wheel. So this is one of the, I don't know whether I answered all the points that we have raised, but in terms of management, that's something that I can contribute. But maybe
yes, Arj, if I take from you, Arj, actually in management we cannot manage corals, but we manage people, right? So all these tools we discussed are to manage people. By managing people, we can protect them, right? Because corals are always there; they manage by themselves and keep as a healthy system. So all these tools we are using to manage people, because we are the people, we are the culprits, really jump into the scenario and make everything, you know, dirty at the end. Therefore, when we think about management, yes, co-management means we take all parties in one single management programs, as Arjan mentioned. So then if I add something more to that, regarding this management, all these most of the plans are still available. So what we have to think is, without reinventing the wheel, so dig into the history and find out what we have done so far regarding coral reefs and built on that. So that we have to definitely do. And then because as we discussed, Arjun mentioned in the first lecture, there's a number of projects, a number of people work. They have come up with lots of nice management plans or whatever. So without putting our effort to redo those management plans again and again, using them and rebrush them and do something on the field is the must at the moment. Therefore, so if anybody wants to do some research on corals, what I'm proposing is at first understand what has been done earlier and become familiarized, then start how you can add or contribute to that. So that's my main concern regarding management. And the bleaching, yes, is a technical thing we discussed briefly, but on the bleaching is a kind of a symptom showed by corals, and then the second scenario is that the pollution. So pollution acts as a catalyst to expedite things. So in the question, everything was there, just but when we control pollution or take actions, we cannot take the whole reef system in the country, because those are scattered and spread all over the country and all over the coastal belt. At the same time, you cannot take one blanket solution for that, because the solutions are site specific. Therefore, so we have to think everything and you have to consider everything when you dealing with a coral reef. Therefore, when you enter a coral reef, you have to understand what has already been done and what can be done, and then think about the site specific problems. Then you can take solutions. For that, you need some theoretical background and same time some practical experience. So with that, I think regarding this, you can take appropriate solutions. Otherwise, if you jump into that and take one-off solution, that will not work.
And there is another question to Mr. Arjan. Have we done any coral restoration trials with adapted corals such as temperature resistance and genetically modified?
My answer to that is that I haven't done that myself, but I know that there were a number of attempts at restoration, and I do not think that a good analysis has been done to look at what is resistant to temperature change or any other threat. But I realize that sometimes a coral that will bleach at 30 degrees, another coral may not bleach at 30 degrees, but may bleach at 32 degrees Celsius. So this is a problem, because you cannot have a threshold in that sense, because you do not know what the next round of warming is going to be. I have seen corals in many places. I have also taken photographs side by side, a bleached one and unbleached coral, side by side. And I have read about this thing where research has been done elsewhere in the world, and they point out to the symbiosis between different strains of algae and coral. So it's a very fine thing, leading into genetics of both. And since corals have adapted over a long period of time, maybe for the last 450 years, going through different various stresses, there appear to be some combinations, zooxanthellae and coral, that tolerate certain conditions better than others. So what we can understand from that is that as time goes on, those ones that tolerate those conditions will be the species that will eventually survive. Because if you look at the history of these, the geological history of the earth and how corals were located in different parts of the world, the center of diversity of corals today is mainly in the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, called the Coral Triangle. But long time ago, the center of diversity has been in the Mediterranean. Before the Indian subcontinent met the Asian landmass. Because there was a thing called the Tethys Seaway there. But the Tethys Seaway got cut off when the Indian subcontinent eventually rammed into Asia. And then the Mediterranean center of diversity died. So you can just imagine what kind of stresses those corals would have gone through. And then the center of diversity shifted to the Caribbean region, in the Atlantic. But today it is back in the Indo-Pacific region. So my point here is that corals have gone through a lot. They've been losing, winning, like that. So it is a war that is going on all the time. But I don't have a direct answer to your thing because I myself haven't done that. And I don't think anybody doing coral restoration in Sri Lanka is looking deeply into that point that you just raised. Thanks. I hope I answered your question.
If I can add a little bit just to Arjan's thing, actually, as Arjan said very correctly, I think I haven't come across any this kind of studies in Sri Lanka, but actually I had a slide on this aspect but I removed that at the end. But this is something which has been trying so many research now to use like a molecular techniques, like a heat resistant gene injected into the corals and to see how they can tolerate the temperatures. But it is of course in the research level. Now the other than that, like instead of that, some people use something called the micro propagation, where like they get some a fragment from the resistant species which would have resisted to the heat, and they will like make it to small pieces and culture them. But again, the problem is the reef dying. It's not. It's one reason is the heat, but it is multiple stresses are there. So even it might be resistant to the temperature, but it might not resist to something else. So that's why we need a sort of a, not just the heat only, but we have to look at the other aspects as well. Just to add something to that one. Thanks.
And there's another question that dumping of unused automobiles or ships in the sea take place in some areas of Sri Lankan Sea. Is it successful or regeneration of successful for regeneration of corals naturally? Professor Kamal.
Actually, this is, as I mentioned before, like even in the breakwaters, as I have shown some of the beautiful images of coral reefs, that it can be successful sometimes, but it's all depend on whether that habitat actually favored for that corals. It's all depend on, it's not, I mean, we can't induce them to go to the wreck and just settle there, because the corals have highly selective in their settlement, where they're going to settle and establish. So that is something you need to think of. Of course, this kind of wrecks will definitely helpful in for the fish to they will breed there and they will be happily will be there. But of course, some of the shipwrecks, of course, we see some corals growing there. But even in that shipwrecks, we see that corals are dying. So that's something we need to think a little bit further. I don't know, Tony, you want to add something? Or?
Yeah, Kamal, if I add something to that, when you do such a project, the site selection is very much critical, right? So the requirement, you have to meet the requirement also. Therefore, you cannot just dump all these vehicles or whatever the parts everywhere. So because countries like, for example, Kenya, they are doing such programs. At the same time, I also dove in some such places. They are doing this to increase their biodiversity, at the same time to convert those as FADs, or fish aggregating devices. So if you do that, definitely just dumping and forget about this, not the process. You have to dump, and you have to look after that, and at the same time you have to declare that area as a no fishing zone, no, the area that is used only for some restricted work, for example, diving and fish watching, those sort of things. So if you can couple those things together, and if you do that with a proper site selection, you will be able to see some sort of good progress. Otherwise, what is happening in Sri Lanka is we just dump. I also know that I also actually contributed at the very beginning in site selection, but then after that, those areas are not declared as no fishing zone, so no any demarcation done there, and just neglected. So that's that's where we go wrong. So if you can have a proper plan, and if you come with a proper scientific background, I think definitely we can yield something fruitful, because if you take examples from other countries, especially in Greater Caribbean region, there are some examples we can take from that region. Yes, everything should be science-based and with sound, and proper planning is needed if you do those. Otherwise, without those planning and without future foreseen effects are not understood, engaging in such activities may create much more hazards than improving the biodiversity.
May I add something to what Dr. Terney said?
Yes.
One of the important things to consider here is the material of the stuff that you dump. Bus bodies and lorry bodies are not very good. They don't last. They are just reverted aluminium structures. They may last one monsoon, but they will just get torn apart, and only the chassis will be left. I can give you one example which I have seen myself. After the 1983 July incident in Sri Lanka, the unfortunate incident in Sri Lanka, number of vehicles that were damaged was dumped in Bambalapitiya at a depth of about 12 meters. So I went and investigated this in 1984 or 85 period. And most of the chassis were also buried, and not a single structure was there because monsoon has just torn them apart. But shipwrecks, barges, and those things are good because they are meant for the ocean. They are ocean-going vessels. They are built with high, strong metal sheets and not flimsy rivets and aluminium sheets. So that's another point that I just wanted to highlight here.
Yes, Raj, if I counted something to that, if you think about the Hermes, one of the deepest wreck, and still is an aircraft carrier. So still the aircrafts they are intact, So that's why you have to think about if you do doubt those things, the site selection should be very specific, because that should be sheltered with almost no currents, so few with less currents. So that's why size selection comes into the as one of the most important element in this case. So yes, therefore yes, if you do that, doing with a real requirement and then with a really sound scientific background, then I think that's my argument. So if you do with that background, I think you will see something, but otherwise that will end up as Arjan mentioned, what happening off Colombo.
Yeah, and okay, we have another question. Marine heat waves are becoming more frequent and serve in the future warming climate affecting corals and other marine life. What type of precautionary measures can be taken to protect coral reefs?
If I add, if I answer that, marine heat waves are coming because of our atmosphere is heated too much, because we are emitting huge amount of heat, at the same time huge amount of the global warming gases. So more you emit heat, at the same time more you have global warming gases, they trap there, at the same time they are transferred to the ocean, and that's actually the engine for all these the heat waves, and again all the hurricanes and the tornadoes or whatever. Even Ida, the storm happened recently in USA. So that's the main reason. So if those things happen in our waters, what we can do is the options we are having is very less, because we can't transfer corals into deep areas. Therefore, understanding those situations, and at the same time, if you can do some ex situ restoration, ex situ conservation at some point, maybe do some experimental sites with broken corals in some deep areas are again possible. But in general, the options we are having to counterattack those environmental hazards are very much limited with our human capacity.
Yeah, and another.
If I can add just a bit, Trishan, to that one. I mean, of course, the people might not have the option, but as most researchers say, that coral will have the option. Now if the temperature is going to be higher, that will likely be the subtropical areas, that environment will be much better for the corals to go. So coral will move from the tropics to further a subtropics, so that area, that coral has that option. That's something that thinking some scientists, that they are believing that could happen in the future. They will move into the subtropical areas with the increase in temperature. Just to add something.
Yeah, and another question: destructive or unsustainable fishing is one of the main threats to the coral reefs in the country. How can DWC and DFAR work together in the ground level to overcome this? Can you provide some suggestions? Terney?
Yes, yes, we have lots of those interagency collaboration and coordinations are there, but we have to improve that for some extent, because in Sri Lankan situation we have the tools. What we need is the implementation. So therefore, even though these agencies getting together is not a solution, but getting together and implementing available tools should be the main target if you are really looking for some tangible outcomes. Yes, there are some good rapports and discussions happening, and they always work in co-management committees and those interagency coordination committees, but still we have to think of how we can really implement this is the main question we are having.
Yes, I finished. If I can add with the wildlife and fisheries, actually though they have the legislative power, but sometimes they don't have the capacity to do this one. So sometimes they have to rely on the Navy or the Coast Guards to do this job, if something going wrong. But there was one case actually, like there was a blast fishing sound came from somewhere, and but some officials were there, but they didn't have any boat to go there to see who is there. So that is the problem, you know. So we have anything, but we don't have the capacity really. So actually we had to lend our boat to go and search for that purpose. So this kind of issues are also there, you know, capacity limitations as well. Okay, thanks.
And another question, even though Maldives have larger coral reefs, their regulation to protect coral reefs is very stringent. Even corals used for producing lime mass building materials so worldwide illegally. What is your opinion?
I would like to answer. Mr.
Yes, Maldives look after their reefs quite well because in the past, Maldives mined a lot of the reefs because they don't have any other building material. But now they have moved away from that, and the houses are now mostly concrete blocks and things like that. In certain ways, they are looking after their reefs, but in certain other ways, they are not. For example, you have now, that is also due to lacking material. Now the entire Ulumale, the airport, the runway was extended by mining one reef. So the whole top of the reef disappeared because it was mined with crane and bucket loaders and all that, and it was dumped to extend the runway. So there are situations where certain parts of Maldives or certain sections of reefs have been damaged as a result. But in general, if you take the fisheries issues, Maldives look after their reefs. There is no netting on the reefs. Nobody is allowed to do any netting. And but of course, you can do the angling and fish. But also, where tourism is, they do not allow fishing to take place. So if you take it as a whole, they are looking after their reefs far better than we do, or even India does.
Another question, there are many international and national laws and regulations to protect marine environment, but lack of implementation. There should be a clear and proper implementation mechanism and monitoring mechanism. I think Professor Terney, can you give an answer?
Yeah, I agree with him. Yes, there should be a clear way of implementing them. The issues are multifaceted. You know, I've been the head of one of the agencies in Sri Lanka. I know the difficulties we have to go through if you want to make it done in our context. Therefore, yes, agree. We can use these available tools, so the sticks in properly and more effective way. But when you go to implement that, we have to face a number of other issues, and yes, it will take some time to change the whole system. Otherwise, as far as those those gray areas are there, it is very difficult to take actions promptly. At the same time, take proper actions all the times is problematic in our system.
And there's another question. Do we have any experience in coral reef relocation within Sri Lankan waters, and who are the experts?
Relocation means once I was in Okinawa, I experienced that once they, at that time, they want to build a fishing harbor. They completely relocated the reef to another place using large barges and cranes, and they break the, not the break, they cut the reef into larger chunks, about 1 ton pieces, and they relocated. But I don't know what happened after that. But they did such a thing. But in Sri Lanka, it's not happening. If you want to do something, we just bulldoze it, or just we just scrape the whole corals and expose the sandy bottom and do the development. We don't have such a reef location systems within my understanding. I think, I don't know with Arj knows that, but in Sri Lankan context, we don't have any such experience regarding reef relocations.
No, Terney, we do not have such an experience, and also we do not have the equipment to do so as well. You have done some small relocations from Kapparathotta to Hikkaduwa and so on, but those are very small, experimental level relocations, but not any large scale activity. And also because it costs money, our people are not so interested as well.
Yeah, actually, there's one case. I mean, it is not really a practical issue, but in the northern Jaffna district, there was a tourism, the fishing development project. They are going to have several these anchorages and the landing centers where they have to cut across the reefs. And in that case, actually, in the EIA, it is mentioned that these reefs, at least research level, they have to give a try to relocate when they are cutting through the reefs. That suggestion is there in the EIA. I don't know whether it's going to happen or not, but that is there actually.
And we'll take one question. Professor Terney, can we do or have done deploying of autonomous reef monitoring structures to detect the settling rate of corals in recently damaged reef?
I don't know what is meant by autonomous. I think remotely sensing, detecting devices. If that's so, yes, we can do that. We can. Even now, we are deploying some, remotely operated sensors underwater, and they monitor temperature and pH and share those information online to the laboratories. So those systems are available. At the same time, you can send underwater remote vehicles also to detect that. So if that's the question, yes, we can do that. But it is again a bit costly. But now those equipments become a bit cheaper, and those sensors has become cheaper. That cost about $50. So around that price range. Yes, we can do those remote sensing and autonomous monitoring systems. Yes, but to go to that, if you really want to become a coral researcher, you should have your own first-hand experience by doing that by yourself, and with that experience, then you can go to that next level. So that's my purpose.
If I can add just a bit, I think actually I put a slide also on this autonomous things. I think what this the question was not really about the sensors. I think he was asking about the autonomous vehicle. There are some countries have already developed. They are being used. They have all the sensors plus video cameras and everything. The fully automated systems that will monitor the whole coral reef systems. And it is, you need, of course, only after doing a lot of personal observation, then only, just for monitoring purpose, then you can use this kind of autonomous things. But we have a long way to go before that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And now we have come to the end of today's program. And as the president of SLAAS Section B and a member of Environment Committee of SLAAS, I would like to thank all the committee members of the respective committees for their support for this webinar, and especially Dr. Deep Amaratunga and Dr. Rasika Vanigatunga for organizing this, and especially all the participants. And finally, this webinar won't be success without the presence of our three resource persons, Mr. Arjan Rajasooriya, Coordinator of Coastal Law and Marine Program, IUCN Sri Lanka Country Office, and Professor Terney Predeep Kumara from Department of Oceanography and Marine Geology, Ruhuna University, and Professor Kamal Ranathunaga from the Director, Center for Marine Science and Technology, University of Jayewardenepura. And we will meet again with another webinar in future. And thank you again, and good night.